Hey, everybody, welcome to today's episode of the What Worked For You show. Today, we are talking to an industry veteran who's been in the business world as an entrepreneur almost 5 decades. And the wisdom that comes with a track record like that, you can't buy that off the shelf. You can read about it, you can learn, and we're going to talk about some of those things today. But the wisdom that comes from someone that has been successful in business for that kind of time, these are just conversations that, quite frankly, we all as entrepreneurs should cherish because we can learn so much that can really help us to make sure we stay on path. Our guest today, again, on top of doing this, he's big on building culture in our world where everyone seems to be hopping from job to job, opportunity to opportunity. He's big on building culture, building leaders from within, building succession plans from within. And it's worked out really well. He's been in the HVAC industry in particular for a very long time. He's authored a book called Growing Your Own. He's invested in commercial real estate, and he has seen a lot of things. So let's dive in. Rich Ashton, it is a pleasure to have you today. How are you?
Well, I love that introduction. Thanks for doing such a great job with it.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. So you've acquired, you've turned around, you've operated, you've sold businesses for over 45 years. What do you think? What do you believe you consistently did better than a lot of owners that allow you to win for such a long period of time?
I have never been asked that question. I really like that question.
All
I
right.
was very fortunate that my first employer was a large real estate developer with a fabulous culture and a very entrepreneurial culture. And the foundation of everything I have done since then was learned during those 10 years that I spent in commercial real estate. Um, they were big on empowering people, giving people responsibility at an early age. I benefited by that, even though I had cut my education short after 2 years in college. I was made a partner after 5 years and worked alongside people with Ivy League MBAs and was treated just like one of the boys. And it was a great lesson for me that people, leaders, successful people come in all shapes and sizes and all backgrounds, and through hard work and empowering people, people can achieve amazing results. And so I would say that the consistency is in building culture in every company that I've been involved with.
Love it. So let's dive into a couple points you made there that I think are very relevant today. The first being, we do live in a world where you get on the news and you'll see, and you read some business articles, people job hop, right? Like we're playing whack-a-mole, right? Like it's just boom, 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 boom. You don't hear nearly as much about this idea of building culture from within. Like, do you think we can get back to a point where this idea of building from within is mainstream again?
I sure hope so. The logic of it is that if you can get people to be aligned around some common values, and we always have, then the likelihood that they're going to view their job as something different than just a job is much higher. And we have the HVAC industry is a really high turnover industry. I won't say we don't have turnover, but we have mitigated that issue to a large degree by going back to empowering people, by treating people like they're not just occupying a desk or having a set of tools. We get to know them. We get to know their families when we can. We get to know what makes them tick. If they show any interest in becoming leaders and growing within the company, we jump on that and we'll pour all of the resources we can into making them something they, in many cases, never dreamed that they would become. So I think it's so logical to do it. Like all small business owners, when it's time for some leadership in your company, you can either promote from within, but most of the time, those people are not ready for leadership roles. You can bring somebody in from outside, but the likelihood that they're a fit, having been trained in a larger organization with a chaotic small company, not very good. So I failed in both directions. I finally decided it made a lot more sense to me to take people who believed what I believed and try to make leaders out of them.
Mm. So when you did that, right, there's always going to be this thing where that's awesome, they're growing within the team, but then there's always that, well, hey, now my former coworker is my boss, right? So how did you navigate that successfully?
We're really transparent. And so when someone gets promoted, you're right, somebody else gets their feelings hurt. And we talk to them about it. We're very clear about why decisions were made, why certain people are moving at a faster pace, and then also what it will take for the person left behind to catch up or get ahead. And so when we make decisions in the company, particularly personnel decisions, it's no secret. It's just very clearly communicated. I just find that if you're honest with people, they come to trust you, and you can deliver bad news just like you can deliver good news in that circumstance. One of the failures is on the other side when you become a boss and you're uncomfortable bossing your employees around. We teach people that's a you problem. Leaders are leaders. People want to be led, and your job, if you take the challenge, your job is to add a layer of leadership to the company. If you do it well, people love to follow you.
No, that's true. People absolutely want to be led. And I want to speak to that point a little bit deeper. We live in what I've heard, I call it, and I'm sure others have said the same, the keyboard warrior society, right? Because we have social media and everyone's really big on being the armchair quarterback expert at all subjects at all time. And now with AI, we've never been more empowered to be the expert at everything. Which of course is nonsensical, but the reality is when you watch people share online, that's how it comes across. And it's like, well, wait a minute, do they really know all the ins and outs? And the reality is we all know that's not true. But I think one of the problems with this keyboard mentality is we now have a culture of people that are not willing to be honest with each other, because it's way easier to just share. And I mean, how many times have we said, I wonder if they would actually say that if we were standing, right, looking at each other, right? We've all had this experience.
Mhm.
And it's taken away from the transparency and the honesty. How do you guys handle that?
We deal with it as soon as it begins to happen. And you're right, it's hard. It happens sometimes at night when things are posted and said online. Once we become aware of it, we deal with it absolutely on the spot. And my style has always been whether I've been around longer than the social media has. So the problem is not new. The execution is different. But every time there is a rumor or something said about somebody, I've always gotten both or all three or all four people in the room, and then we hash it out. You're right. They're not likely to say it in front of you, but you can push and you can get it said. And then we just make it very, very clear it isn't going to be tolerated. Very likely, if it happens again, someone's not going to be there. Maybe all three of them aren't going to be there. But once you establish a zero tolerance policy on that sort of stuff, it doesn't ever go away, but it sure does get lessened.
Mm, mm. Yeah, no, and that makes sense because it is just staggering, especially in today's day and age. If one little thing missaid goes astray, everybody takes it and runs with it, and next thing you know, you're a mile away from where reality lies.
Yeah, and nobody wants to get called into the principal's office, and particularly, it's embarrassing when they get caught. And one nice thing about social media is most of it you can go back and prove. So
Yeah.
it's really, really hard to escape the truth. And after a couple of times, somebody doesn't want to go through that again. They either stop it or they get gone.
Yeah, yeah, no. So you've built these cultures that are rooted in integrity. You value exceptional customer service, employee support. You've had success with building culture. A lot of companies struggle with it, right?
Mhm.
And you read about it on the news. You talk to somebody that works at ABC company somewhere, and right, you hear the challenges. You talk to other entrepreneurs. Like it's not an uncommon or unknown thing that it's a challenge to build. How has your approach allowed you to succeed in this place spot of culture building that's such a challenge for so many?
Well, I mentioned it earlier. It all starts with the people, and it starts with connecting with people. And I learned along the way that being relational is a real asset, particularly in small business, where you do have an opportunity to know everyone you work with. My wife is highly relational, and I learned an awful lot by watching her dealing with people. I have not been always I've not always been as relational as I am today. But I think it all starts there. And then I think it continues with being transparent, being the same person every day, being someone that employees can trust and learn from and understand, like I said earlier, there's bad news, but when you trust a person, you can hear bad news. And when someone says this is what I'm going to do, and then they actually go and do it, that's really reinforcing. I tell the story many times about a lady who came into our company as a dispatcher, and she was a good employee. She wasn't a great employee for the first year. I couldn't connect with her, and I make it a point to every time I see an employee to have just a brief interaction with them. I try to connect with everybody around some kind of a different subject. I couldn't break through with her, and it took a year. One Monday morning, she came in, and for some reason, she was open. She was laughing, and she said. I had an experience on the football field this weekend. The referee called a penalty on my son, and I thought it was the wrong call, and I kind of made a fool of myself. And I said, well, unfortunately, I've been in that situation more than once. We connected over that. And it seems odd, but that opened her up. And it didn't just open her up to me, it opened her up to other employees. She's now a supervisor in the company. And I would never have imagined that she could move into a leadership role later on. She's doing a fabulous job. But we had to break through with her. She had to understand that she could trust the environment she was in. She could trust the leadership in the company. That's probably the best answer I can give you. It all starts with connecting with people.
Yeah, I appreciate that story because we've all had those people in our life where it's like you're trying to connect with them and it's just like, right, it's like you're bumping against a wall,
Mhm.
right? And you know it needs to happen, but it's like just the resistance. Like, what are, you mentioned you connected over the penalty at the football game. What are some tips you would give to people to say, hey, when you're trying to connect the person that's, we'll just call them unconnectable, right? Or what's the perception of that, right? Because anybody can be connected to, but the perception, different avenues, because that's a real problem. And that problem, off, which sometimes can be built by our own limiting beliefs, can absolutely limit progress in business.
Oh, I'm a big believer in what you just said. It is our ceilings that self-imposed ceilings that keep us from moving forward, and it's especially true when you're trying to build leaders. Um, in answer to your question, I had to look myself in the eye and say, how am I ever going to be able to break through? Do I just give up? And I said, I'm going to continue to be me. I'm going to be pleasant. She doesn't want to talk about family. I'm not going any place she doesn't want to go. But if I'm ever given the opportunity, then I'm going to ask one more question. She can choose to answer it or she can choose not to answer it. And that's how we went along for so many months. But when the opportunity was there for, I don't know why she let down, that Monday morning, but she did. And so I was ready to go a little bit deeper. And I never force it. But it's people, people like to have leaders interested in their lives, and they'll tell you how far they want to go, or maybe when they go too far, maybe you have to shut it off. But I typically don't find it as difficult as I did with her.
Mm. Yeah, no, I mean it's there's always that one, right?
Yeah, and there are people, particularly in a trades company, where the technicians are not used to the owner wanting to know more about them. They're satisfied with the owner knowing their name, and I'm just not satisfied with that. If I know that I can get more out of them if we can have a relationship, because if I can understand them and what makes them tick, then I can be a better leader. And sometimes it takes a little longer with some, and some come in and want to talk from day one and just love the idea that they get to have the relationship with the owner. But everyone is different.
It's interesting. I met an entrepreneur once. Whenever they hired people, they try to not just get to know the potential employee, but also the family of that employee.
Mhm.
And I just thought it is uncommon, but man, it makes such a difference.
Yeah, for me, it's fun. It's who I am. I've been to, kids' athletic events. I've been to quinceañeras, weddings, funerals. I've visited employees or employee family members in the hospital. It's kind of just an extension of who I am. But when you do those things, the response that you get and the loyalty that you get out of the employees, and that's not why you do it, but when you do it, the results are fantastic.
Love it. So, by building such strong internal leadership, you were able to step away from day-to-day management. So, you know, developing leaders, of course, has evolved over the years, especially as technology and the pace of technology, especially now with AI, where people are like, am I going to be reporting to a computer in the future? Right? Starting to hear things like that. As we move into this world of AI, which is going to be, infiltrating everything we do, what do you see as the key, a key or two that's really going to determine effective leadership in this new world we're stepping into?
I Simon Sinek wrote a very popular book called Start With Why. You've probably read it. We read it as a group, and it didn't change the way we thought about our company, but it helped us focus on why we were in business. And we determined that we're in business to provide exceptional service through the support and empowerment of employees. Um, I think that's the answer to your question. We employ AI, but we don't use AI in customer facing situations because we don't think AI provides exceptional customer service. We think it makes us better on the back end, the processing side. I think there will come a time when AI, will be as good or better on a customer facing basis, but I think we're a ways off from that. And we've looked at it. We look at it on a regular basis just to make sure we're not missing anything. But if we stay true to our why, does it make us better at customer service? The answer is no. Does it make our employees better? Maybe in some areas it does. It certainly makes them more efficient. But every question, every change in the company is run through that filter of here's why we're in business. Will it enhance our why? Will it not enhance our why? And I think as we move forward, fortunately, it'll happen a little bit at a time. Um, I'm not sure because of my age, I'm not sure that I'm the best one to ask about AI. I may have gone about as far with AI as I'm capable of going, but I do believe it's a great opportunity for us, and I certainly believe that it's going to change leadership. But at the core, if you're going to provide customer service, employees are going to be involved, people are going to be involved, and I think leading people will never be done better by AI.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Love it. It's going to be interesting the days ahead. That
Oh,
is for sure.
they're interesting now.
That is true. That is true. So, Well, let's step back in time a little bit. You got started in business through commercial real estate, as I understand. So
That's
how
correct.
did that come to be?
I got lucky. My wife actually worked for a company, and I got introduced to them. They had a bottom rung position that I was qualified for, and I kind of snuck in through the back door. And as I said, they were smart, they were hardworking. It was just the best start that anybody ever could have had. I decided after 10 years that real estate was not my passion. And I also wondered, I had been more successful than I expected to be. And I wondered if my success was due to being plugged into a great system in a great company or if it was because of me. And I really needed to find that out. So I sold my interest back to my partners and went into the world of small business, not having any idea what I was going to do. I did a little more real estate on my own while I looked for an operating company to buy. I started a couple of companies and then I bought the HVAC company right out of the edge of bankruptcy in 1988 and began to rebuild the company.
Wow. So there's a lot there. So let's break that down a little bit. You got it. So you got in the real. You got in through the back door. Okay,
I
we
did.
love it. The opportunity comes in, but you did before. Like they were molding you,
They
right? You
were.
were being molded. You were being developed. You were being molded. You're learning it. What was a big takeaway from that time that you still leverage today? And the second part of it would be what was that moment that said, and it resonated when you said this, that you know what, this isn't my passion.
Um, the first answer is that my very first boss recognized that I didn't know anything about business. And he was right, I didn't. And he said, I want you to start reading 5 business periodicals every week, and I want you to read the Wall Street Journal every day. And he said, you're going to be surprised at how you catch up. You're not going to be the equal of these guys with Harvard MBAs that you're working next to, but you're going to make up that gap pretty quickly. Best advice that I ever got. And I can 52 years later now I continue that program and in fact have expanded it. I read on a lot more than business items. I think the acquisition of knowledge throughout your career is the smartest investment that you can make.
Mm.
I read, and my rule is that if I read a book on customer service today, I can't read another customer service book until I've read 4 other books on different subjects. And so I keep the information fresh. Audiobooks and podcasts make it great for gathering information quickly. And so that's the first answer. The moment that I realized it wasn't a moment. Gradually I began to say, I'm not as excited about getting out of bed and going to the office. My boss every weekend would drive the whole Dallas-Fort Worth area looking at the buildings that were under his control. He put his kids in the car and he would do that every Sunday morning. And I thought, that just sounds horrible to me. I like what I'm doing, but I don't love it to that degree. And I began to look about why that was. Was I lazy? And then I thought, no, it's really that I just don't care that much about real estate. I want a people-oriented business. I want to make decisions in the morning that pay dividends in the afternoon. And so I set about looking for an operating company that would allow me to provide. I felt like I was a good communicator and I felt like I was good at customer service. So those were the 2 guiding principles as I looked for business opportunities.
We got to talk about one of those principles, but I got to ask, still read the Wall Street Journal every day?
Every
WSJ?
single day.
Every single day?
I
Still
don't
just as
have,
good as it was back then?
no, well, it is better if you have the paper in your hand. It's not as good online, and I read it online.
Ah, okay. So that's the catch. Got to get the publication.
You got to have it in your hands to make it really worthwhile. But
Love
it
it.
it does it exposes you to an awful lot of different things in a short period of time, and I love that.
Love it. You just said something that really struck me. So we got our Wall Street Journal strategy, but this might be, I really like this. You want to do something where you make decisions in the morning that pay dividends in the afternoon.
Correct.
Can you expand on that?
Well, I was in the real estate business, and you can make decisions in the morning about building a building, but it's going to take you 18 months before you can ever do anything with that building. And that frustrated me. I really felt like all of the decisions I made were long-term decisions, and I was always fighting, while the building was under construction and I was looking for long-term financing, rates changed, and the market was always changing, and I had very little control over it. In small business, I literally make decisions in the morning that do pay dividends that afternoon, whether they're marketing decisions, personnel decisions, just little tweaks here and there. I love that about being in small business and being in operating business.
Mm. So basically, you want to be in places where you get a reward quick. There's a
Yeah,
reward on the
I
effort.
have, like lots of people, I have a short attention span. And when I can get some, if not instant gratification, pretty short-term gratification, I just love it. I just think it keeps you motivated. And so I look for those wins. When I wound up writing the book, I wrote it in 2.5-page chapters. And so it's 35 separate principles. And I often say to people, if you're stuck, read one of the chapters. Just randomly read a 2.5-page chapter. It'll tell you everything you need to know. You can make a tweak in your operating strategy and you can see immediate results. So it's just kind of how I'm wired.
Well, but I really like that because what do we value as people? We value progress.
Mhm.
We value progress. And if we can feel we're progressing, I mean, we're all intelligent people in this world. We understand that it's never going to be perfect, that something can always be better. I know people throw the word around perfect, but the reality is nothing is ever really perfect.
Mhm.
But if we feel like there is progress, it is fuel, and it's contagious fuel.
As you are training, right, as I am training leaders, giving them easy, quick wins, and watching their progress, it's very reinforcing. It's just like you said, we love to have successes. I'm big on delegating non-critical projects to employees who have a desire to move ahead and learn a little bit, and then you get to watch them and you get to help them along. And if they have a little success with an easy project, you make the next one a little bit tougher, but you just keep moving them down that path of successes, and with a few failures, but not many.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean that's brilliant. Just it's so important to get those. I tell people momentum is such an underrated thing
Mhm.
because, but once it's going, wow, it is such a powerful ally.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's just powerful stuff. So let's talk about momentum. So you decide, hey, you want to buy a business. Hey, let's get out of the real estate thing. Let's buy a business. Like you were in a commercial world, so it wasn't like you were naive to business at this point. But then, of course, going on your own, a little bit different story, as every entrepreneur knows.
Mhm.
Like, what's going through you buy your first business? Like, what's going through your mind? Where's this thing going? Like, walk us through that. Because for a lot of entrepreneurs and people listening to our show, some of them haven't bought a business yet, right? There's a lot of what ifs going on.
Oh, there are, and I was 39 years old when I bought the HVAC business, and I'd been in different industries, but I'd never been in a trade industry. My first, I said earlier that I bought it when it was on the edge of bankruptcy, and being pretty confident at my age and having come off several successes, I thought I was pretty bulletproof, and I assumed that I could, even though I didn't know anything about the HVAC business, I assumed I could turn it around in 2 years. What I didn't understand was that the banking system was about to collapse right around the turn of the 89, 90 area. And so the loan that I inherited with the bank was about to be called. Um, so that was my first struggle. The second one was I felt like I was a good communicator and a good customer service provider in the HVAC business. If you can provide great customer service ethically, you ought to be able to dominate the world. But what I couldn't do was I couldn't get my message across to our technical employees because I was outside the industry and I had never experienced, I'd always managed salespeople and trying to manage technicians who didn't trust you because you didn't have a technical background. That was a new experience for me. So then I had to learn that I had to communicate with the field people through someone who had come out of the field. And that was it was very interesting. It took me 5 years to get the business fully turned around. I didn't do a very good job of analyzing the challenges that were ahead of me, but there's a fine line between stubbornness and stupidity, and I think I crossed that several times. But I was plenty stubborn, and I wasn't going to fail. And ultimately, we got it turned around and headed in the right direction. We never became world dominant. That was my disappointment, um, but we have a very good couple of companies that I still own today.
Well, I don't know about world dominant, but if you've been in business for over 4 decades, 5 decades, I mean, a lot of people don't last that long. It's
Most
just the
don't.
reality of it. Most don't. That's right. So, I mean, to have success for that period of time, you have to be doing something right. In fact, you have to be doing a lot of things right.
We do a lot of things right. We've got a pretty good system, and then we've acquired some fantastic employees along the way. And now the leadership team is carrying on, and every bit as well as I could have hoped that they would.
So back in the early days, you buy the company. I mean, okay, the note's going to be called soon. Welcome to the world of business. You're just like, oh, okay. Like, and obviously you got through that, but when a lot of entrepreneurs get into business, in particular the trades, and that's something we've looked into. The trades business is interesting because people have very short, at least in our experience, I have found being in real estate as well that people have very short runways, so to speak. It's like go to the thing, to the thing, to the thing, to the thing. Not a lot of long-term thinking going on. And how did you get past that? Because clearly now with the culture and all that, there's a lot of long-term thinking going on.
Mhm.
But I know a lot of people in trades, and I know most people I know in that world are not thinking long-term. So,
Well, I think we've always run the business differently than our competitors, and I think that's a strength of ours. I go back to my first company. I learned so many things from them. It was not a formalized training program. It was just every day was getting a great education in business and doing business the right way. And they had to think they were a real estate development company, not a brokerage company, and so they were building buildings and developing for the long term. I think I just came out of that with a good long term attitude, and then all of those guys that I worked with were mentors to me unknowingly. I learned something different from each one of them. I continued to learn from friends of mine who were in other businesses and saw how they were succeeding. So I don't think long-term strategy has ever been an issue for me. I think it just felt kind of natural. I did not know when I bought the company, I didn't know if I'd be out of it in 5 years or 50 years. But I would have bet that it would have been a lot shorter than what it has been. But I never thought of it as a short term, as a means to an end. I really thought of it as something that I would do for quite a while. I like the business, to be honest with you.
I love it. I love it. No, that's so good. So while you were doing this, what was that moment, or maybe it was a series of moments that made you think, you know what? We need a program to train leaders. Like, what was that moment where you were like, you know what? Maybe this is something we need to really do.
Yeah, it was a series of moments. It was a series of minor failures because I did bring in people from outside and tried to incorporate them into our culture. It rarely worked. We did promote a couple of people who weren't prepared. That didn't work. And I just said, I have two choices because I'm getting old and I'm either going to develop a leadership team that can carry on or I'm going to have to sell this thing. And the selling is always an option, but we operate uniquely, and I did not want to turn the employees and the customers over to a private equity group who was simply in it for the money. And that's really the primary option out there. So I just said, I'm going to take a really good shot at it. And I failed at it the first time. The leadership program I put together was designed around teaching them to think like me, an entrepreneurial owner. That wasn't what I needed. They couldn't do it. But I didn't need entrepreneurs. I needed leaders in the company. So I retooled and I began this leadership training program with 8 employees, all of whom had potential to become leaders. By the time we finished the program, 2 had failed at it. One just didn't want to work hard enough. The other one just couldn't apply the principles. So we finished up with 6 people capable of carrying the company forward. I stayed in the building and let them run the company under the general manager, who was a good leader. And he did it for a year. And then I said, okay, I'm going to move out of the building. I'm going to come back every quarter for a financial review. And I moved out of the building the end of the year. So they've got it.
Mm, gotcha. What would you say? People bring in leaders from other companies all the time. You were like, it didn't work out for you. What's the main reason that didn't work out?
I think because our greatest strength is our culture and our greatest limitation may be our culture. It's hard to get other people, whether they're technicians, whether they're leaders, to come into the company and enjoy it. We know usually within about a week if an employee is a good fit. We talk culture in the interview. We talk culture all the way through. We talk about it every day in the company. And if you bring in experienced people, particularly experienced tradesmen, they're used to doing things a different way. And all of a sudden, our way doesn't look logical to them. They like it if they stay a while. And we frankly quit hiring experienced tradespeople for the most part, developed a program of our own, an apprenticeship program of our own, where we take top technicians out of technical schools and bring them into our program and teach them our way. That has worked out really, really well. But it's the same reason that our culture doesn't work for just everybody. They come in, they love it from the start. They don't have to adapt to it. So
That reminds me of the idea is I know some people in my world, they're like, they never hire for skills. They're looking for those intangibles.
mhm.
Like if they got the intangibles, we can teach them the rest. That's
We
what.
uh, we tried that in our apprenticeship program, and you have to have mechanical aptitude. Doesn't matter how great a personality you have. If you don't have mechanical aptitude, you probably ought to not strap a tool belt on. And
There is truth to that, yes.
and so, I mean, I'm thinking of a face of a guy that we really liked in the interview, and we all agreed we should hire him. And he didn't work out, but he just didn't have mechanical aptitude. And we kind of forgot to look at that because we were looking at the intangibles.
Well, that is true, yeah. So yeah, it does have to be some skill. That is true. So true, so true. What did it feel like for you to step back and see the team run?
Well, first I was ready. And then second, I mentioned earlier, I stayed in the building while they ran the company. And so I was there, but I wasn't actively participating in day-to-day activities. So I did it a little bit at a time. But last year, I I had stopped working on Mondays as part of this transitional program. And on Tuesday morning, I looked at my wife and I said, I wouldn't go in today if I didn't have to. And she said, in all this time, I have never heard you say that. And I thought to myself, it's probably time. And that actually made it easier because I knew it was time. And I just had done this stuff for so long. And the team was doing a good job of making some changes. I didn't disagree with the changes, but I wasn't part of them, didn't feel the same. And so it was better for me to be out of the building. And then I had written the book, or I wrote the book during that time and published it. So I had a project to go to. And that made it a lot easier too, because I had a new challenge. When I wrote the book, it was really a legacy book in my mind. And then my entrepreneurial nature took over, and I said, I'm going to see about marketing this and see if there's a place for this information in the world. And so I've been busy doing that, and I don't have to get up in the morning and go, wow, I wish I had a company to go to. So it's just another challenge in my life, and it's a fun one. So that I think if there was any temptation to start meddling in the company, that has removed that temptation.
Mm, I like that. So let's talk about the book real quick.
Mhm.
It's been described as practical and actionable. Two things that we all need a lot of as entrepreneurs. Less theory, more let's get it done. If someone picks up the book, they read it, what's a shift they can absolutely, assuming they take the action, what's the biggest shift you think people will get out of reading the book?
Let me answer that in just a second. I haven't told you how the book came to be, and
Okay.
it probably helps if I say that. So I didn't sit down to write a book. In the course of the leadership training program, I decided that we needed a little something extra, and for whatever reason, I decided to write a blog to the leadership team every 2 weeks. They were short. They were on random leadership and management topics. Um, and what I was trying to do was to create some water cooler conversation so that they would begin talking about leadership concepts because they didn't do that. It didn't work until the general manager said, I'm going to set aside 20 minutes in our weekly management meeting the week that the blogs come out, and I'm going to make them read that and talk about them openly. That's when it really took off. And they began holding each other accountable. They began solving problems, referring back to the blogs. And so I did that for 2 years. And at the end of 2 years, I was about out of ammunition. And I said, you guys have done really well. That's when I started to step back, even though I was in the company. I read through the 52 blogs one weekend, and I said, this is good. I'm going to publish this in book form. So I took and consolidated the chapters down. So there are 35 chapters. They're about 2.5 pages a piece. Each one illustrates a separate principle in leadership. So, and then they're grouped into topics like communication and accountability and gaining knowledge, things like that. So the shift in answer to your question would be that I can grasp this leadership stuff one morsel at a time. I don't have to read a 400-page leadership manual from John Maxwell, and his stuff is great, but it's not for my people. It's not directed at small business. It's directed at large organizations. This book is directed squarely at small business people, owners, wannabe leaders, even experienced leaders have told me that they didn't learn anything new from the book, but they were reminded of about 5 things that they used to do that they had stopped doing. And so I think there are 35 answers to your question. I think you can shift. You can take something, take a morsel, put it into play that afternoon, and begin as you go through the book. You can begin to build your leadership arsenal. And just by reading the book, even without taking a training course, you'll become a better leader, a better communicator, and a better leader.
And I like how you slid in there. They're short, so if I read it in the morning, by the afternoon, we're rocking.
Back to that same principle. That's right. I can't get away from it.
I caught that. Yes, yes, I like that. And that's powerful though, right? Because there's a ton of great books. But,
Absolutely.
but the problem is you read them and you get to the end, and what do most people do? We say, well, that was a great book. And then we tell our friends about it and all that. But did we take action? Did we did we implement what we just learned?
Yeah, this book winds up being for the employees and for anybody else who reads it, it winds up being a desktop reference. It's the kind of book you leave available because you want to say, wait a minute, I think Rich wrote something about that. Let me see what chapter that was. And I feel the same way about the book Extreme Ownership, which we read as a group. And that's a book that I always keep on my desk because those chapters were dynamite. They were longer than 2.5 pages, but they were great illustrations of leadership topics.
Love it. In your leadership journey, what would you say is the biggest challenge you've had as a leader, but it taught you the most?
Um, getting wannabe leaders to shed their self-imposed ceilings. It's different for all of us. Mine was a ceiling put on me by my dad. Sometimes it came from parents. Sometimes it's just life that slaps you around and tells you you just can't be any more than you are. For a technician or an installer, they likely cut their education off either early in college or at high school. They've probably not been exposed to leadership training. And getting them to think like a leader as opposed to a technician is hard. It isn't that they want to think that way. It's just that that's how they think. And so when we're beginning to train people, the first thing we do is identify what that ceiling is, and then we begin trying to help them break through that ceiling. I think that's the most difficult. We've got some good people who get stuck. And then we have to go back and say, why are we being stuck? And it takes a while. It is very few people does a light bulb just immediately go off and they say, well, I've been this way all my life. I think I'll change and be something different tomorrow. It doesn't happen that way.
How we wish it was that simple.
Yeah, yeah.
We live in a world that kind of reminds me, like, I'm always seeing people today in the real estate world in particular, with all the information online, on YouTube, and now you have AI, and there's like this, it's like everybody believes they can be great at anything for free. And we all know that it's been around the block a little while, know there's a cost to everything. There's a cost to everything. How do you explain to your team, yeah, there's a cost to leadership, but it's absolutely worth it?
Well, I think I'll talk about the knowledge gathering because that's a real stumbling block for most people who are not yet in a leadership role. Um, it just seems like reading is too difficult, and reading things that aren't fun to read is especially difficult. Um, but then on the other hand, they'll say, well, how do you know that? How would you have come up with that? And I go, I read this book, I read this book, I listened to this podcast. That's where that knowledge came from. There's no shortcut. If you want to acquire knowledge and a breadth of knowledge, it's it's an everyday pursuit. And, if while you're watching a football game, I might be listening to a podcast and, out for a walk. And not that I don't like football, but it's a daily exercise for me. And I just think it should be for everybody. And when people commit to it, they're kind of shocked at how much they learn.
It reminds me of a quote that one of my coaches says. He said, how can you expect to succeed at business if you're not obsessed with it?
Mhm.
How do you teach obsession?
Don't. You don't. That's a feeling. I was lucky that I've always had a passion for business and I've had a passion for people, but I don't have a passion for music and I don't there's nothing you could do to
Mm-hmm.
create in me an obsession or a passion for music. It just not how I'm wired. I'm grateful every day that that's one of the passions that I have.
So when you're working with people, you're looking for people that the passion, the obsession, it's a core part of who they are before you put them in that company.
We look in every organization, there are unofficial leaders, whether it's a sports team or a business. There are people that other people look up to, whether they have a title or not, and often they don't. So we look for those people. Those people have a little understanding of the magic of leadership. They may not know they're passionate, but you have a chance to get them excited. Whereas someone that just goes about their job and is happy just doing their job, that's probably not where you should be looking. And I don't, I think they can be passionate about their family, they can be passionate about their craft, but they're not going to become excited about business and leading people.
Yeah. Mm. One last question. 45 years plus, long time, building stuff. Um, Now the team has succeeded you. You've been able to go into other projects, making an impact in other ways. If you could describe the legacy you hope to leave for the next generation of business owners, how would you describe it?
That's something I spend a lot of time thinking about. I'm on kind of a continuous legacy building program. And there is a quote in a book called Didn't See It Coming that you should be loved most by those who know you best. And I think that applies to families. I think it applies to friendship. I think it applies to leaders in business. I would like to be remembered as someone who was intentional about making other people better, who always led with integrity and transparency, and worked his hardest to become a role model for other young business people. Now, I got a ways to go, but I hope I've got 20 years left to work on that. But that's the legacy I'd love to leave behind.
I love it, love it. Well, I think you got plenty of time. You're rocking and rolling. So wonderful. Well, Rich, thank you for coming on today. Just I love the insights and just the wisdom that comes from the experiences you've had. And to our audience, if you want to learn more about Rich and those very experiences, we'll have a link to his book below, so you can check that out, and we'll have his links where you can reach out and connect with him as well if you like. So Rich, again, I appreciate you being on the show today. Can you leave us with a final word?
Yeah, it's about integrity and it's about people. And I really enjoyed being on the show. I love your conversational style. It's very easy to talk to you.
Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the simplicity of that wisdom. Just
I'm a
keeping it
simple
nice and
guy.
simple never goes out of style, does it?
I hope not.
Love it, love it. Well, thank you again, Rich, for being on the show today. I greatly appreciate it. Look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you, Frank.